this is an instruction video for installing the PKE Enhanced for the Spirit PKE meter. This particular Spirit PKE meter has already been modified in some ways, so bear that in mind when you're putting yours together. The first thing you're going to have to do is remove the 6 screws from the chassis. Put the screws to the side safely. Now, just for information, when I switch my one on, I have a modification where I have 2 LEDs flashing behind effective light when the sound module is in place, because the first sound activates on the switch. Next, carefully remove the back plate from the PKE meter. Here you'll find that one of my modifications is just that I've put a little bag of LEDs in here in case any of the LEDs should fail. Now, for safety, we'd recommend that you would take out the batteries at this time. Now that it's safe to do so, we can actually remove this switch cover as well, just so that it's not in the way. We can remove this top plate here, which is just a cover for the wings mechanism and the motor. The parts that we are interested in today will involve making a soldered connection to this switch and to this switch, and we'll make a soldered connection to the battery connection here and the ground at the bottom of this switch, which we'll have to remove the 2 screws for, so I'll do that next. The kit that you receive from PKE Enhanced includes a wiring loom which has been pre-made just to connect straight up to the pre-made circuit. The connection goes in only one way. Don't try and force it, it will only go in the way that it's required, and it can be gently prized out, wiggled free. Put it to one side for a moment. You'll also find that a new speaker has been provided to save you having to do quite so much soldering, but you will require a soldering iron and perhaps some solder just to wet the tip whilst doing your modification. The next stage is to remove carefully this plate which houses the wings and the motor. If you prise up gently, there should be enough wire to get it to open up in place, but be careful, as you may pull out connections here and here, and these are for the LEDs on the wings. If you do, they're just a push fit back into position. The first connection we're going to make, and the wire should be a decent length for you to do these connections. White wire through this hole carefully, through the back. And up to this top connection here. We're going to join this on with the soldering iron and a little bit of solder to the top of here. Now just ensure that that other wire is still in place and both are now connected. Don't attach the soldering iron for any length of time. That wire can be pulled back just so that it's not getting in the way of closing the chassis again. The yellow wire then connects to the same position on the lower switch. Again, make sure that the wire that is in place already does not get removed from position. So that's it tacked on there as well, and again that wire can come down into this bit here and all the wires can be safe and tucked away. The green wire then goes to VCC, which is the green wire goes onto this connection here, which is the positive connection for the battery. So again, just supporting the red wire that's already there, melt that solder again and make that joint so we have both of those in place. Lastly, orange wire has to go to the switched ground, which is this wire here, this connection here. It's the switched ground, so it's the one that's going to the PKE. It's this one we want to piggyback onto with the orange wire. Again, you may need something to hold that in place, such as a helping hands or someone to hold it for you. I think I'm going to get away with it. Orange wire. What I did was I used a pair of helping hands to hold the switch in place. Might be helpful if you could get somebody to help you with this. And then I soldered the orange wire to the end of the wire that goes to the PCB, so they're both on that same connection. We can then refit the screws to hold that switch in place. Once those connections are made, you can then remove the speaker by simply prising it out with a small screwdriver in between the green plastic and the black. It'll just lift out. You can then place in the one that's attached to the loom that comes with the PKEnhanced kit, and it can go in place. This prevents you from having to resolder these connections. Once it's in place, all that I've done is I've taken the soldering iron here and just melted the plastic slightly on each side. That holds it in place. It's quite common practice in these type of props or toys. The other thing to note here is I've connected up the connector in position, and this is a good place for the PKEnhanced to sit, because it is not interfering with the original PCB. Please note that when you do that, you make sure it's seated down, and what I've done is I've just cut a small piece of foam and that just rests on top, and the other wires can coil up on top, and then the lid can come down and hold it in place. You could choose to glue it in place or put a bit of double-sided sticky foam down there. That's fine as well. Just ignore this wire. This is from a previous modification, this red and black wire. That's not to do with that. Now all that's left is the speaker that you took out is actually attached up here. If you're quite happy with the soldering iron, you can just take that and desolder it out of position like that, and it can be just kept for future or discarded. Now the sound will only come through the PKEnhanced and out the speaker that's been put in position. Another option, of course, for the speaker, if you're uncomfortable about desoldering from the PCB itself, you could just choose to cut these wires and insulate them apart with some insulating tape. Would be fine. It's a nice neat finish if you can take it off back here at the PCB, but only if you're comfortable to do so. It's quite happy for them just to be cut and tucked back with some insulation. We can now refit the switch cover because it's quite loose and falls away. This time you should just check around the unit to make sure that it does seat back into place and that you're not trapping any wires. Quite happy with that. There's no wires visible there, none trapping, and this goes down nicely. That in position, and we can replace the batteries, observing the polarity, and then we can replace the motor cover and wings cover and put that into position as well. Just make sure that you're not trapping any wires. As you can see, the switch cover, it comes away very easily, so it's now in position again. Ensure that your wires are running up the side of your battery pack here and over the top of this switch here. You could, if you wanted, to put some hot glue in there to hold them in position. I'll just be careful when I'm closing the unit up. reposition the back shell, and it should clip into place, and all the seams around about should close. Again, if you've got a wire trapped, as I think I might have here, you can see that it's not closing properly, so I need to remove the back shell and just make sure that the wires are actually clear. I think it's that orange wire that's just snagging a little bit there. It can be gently pushed into place, and you'll have it. It's now closing properly. If you're happy that it's closing properly, replace the screws. Now that the unit is back together again, when you switch on the switch, you will hear the low PKE sound. I also have 2 flashing red LEDs in place there, and that was a small modification I did earlier. When you press the button, the bottom microswitch is activated and will activate the rising wing sound. And you're now in the faster sound for the Spirit PKE. When you press the button again, it deactivates and goes into the wing close sound, and then goes into the idle sound. And then switch it off.